Well, I almost died 10 years ago.
Oh, wow.
And my wife found me unconscious, called an ambulance. I woke up in the emergency room, and the doctor looked down at me and said, "You're one step away from a coma, 2 steps away from dying." And then I went unconscious again. So I hovered between life and death for a while there, and found it was a very clarifying experience, because when you're in that situation, you don't want suppositions or wishful thinking. You want to know what happens if indeed I close my eyes for the last time in this world. And so that's what prompted me. I believe the Bible because I'm a Christian, but I'm also a skeptic. And so I wanted to investigate, is there evidence that supports what the Bible says or contradicts what the Bible says? And so I interviewed everyone from neuroscientists to historians to philosophers to all kinds of folks, experts, to try to get to the bottom line of how can we know for sure that when we leave this world, we'll continue to live on.
So what did you discover in your studies?
The most shocking thing I discovered were the validity of near-death experiences, because I was a skeptic about those. I thought that they were maybe the product of a lack of oxygen to the brain, a hallucination or something. And yet there have been 900 scholarly studies done of near-death experiences published in medical and scientific journals over the last 40 years. So there's a lot of research that's been done. And The Lancet, which is a famous medical journal in England, concluded that none of the alternative explanations can account for all the dimensions of a near-death experience. And John Burke, a Christian pastor who investigated 1,000 of these cases, concluded that when you look at what actually takes place, it's consistent with Christian theology.
It almost sounds like to me that you're talking about investigating the case for the resurrection.
In a sense,
it kind of reminded me.
Yeah, because we will be, the Bible says that when we die, our spirit separates from our body and continues to live on in the intermediate state before the consummation of history, when we'll be given our resurrected bodies and go through judgment and be spending eternity in heaven or hell. So I had to find out, is there good evidence we have a soul, a spirit? How do I know that it continues to live on? And what about the resurrection of Jesus? Because if Jesus claimed to be the Son of God, backed it up by returning from the dead, he's got the credibility. He created the afterlife. We ought to give special consideration to what he has to say about it.
Lee Strobel joining me today here on the Meeting House on Faith Radio, National Religious Broadcasters 2022. Also, Manny Sandoval, who is the director of this upcoming film, The Case for Heaven, in theaters 3 nights, April 4th, 5th, and 6th. This is the Meeting House here on Faith Radio. Well, I want to swing now over to Manny. This is, when you think about putting together a movie that deals with the topic of heaven, and of course there are a lot of interviews. Yep. You interviewed quite a few folks in the book. So how do you put all of this together and really make it something that is compelling and that really makes, as the title suggests, the case for heaven?
Yeah, well, Lee did a fantastic job, and he made my job really easy. I mean, the framework was there. I think what I had to do visually and story-wise is how to make it accessible. I think I basically put myself in the audience shoes and said, what questions or what things am I skeptical about, even as a Christian, right? So I think a lot of people have a lot of questions, and even if you're a Christian, you don't know how to explain a lot of the things that you believe in sometimes, or why we believe those things, right? So I think the apologetics, to me, actually inspired me and gave me creativity. And then from people that don't know who God is, I think what we try to do is illustrate and share these stories of a lot of guests in the film, whether it's like Steve Caballero, Francis Chan, there's John Steingart, a young man who walked away from his faith, and we're not shying away from the hard questions. You know what I mean? I think one thing that John told me, which I thought was really interesting and powerful, he's like, if God is so great, he shouldn't be afraid of my questions. And I was like, yeah, that is very true. And that's why we took this journey. And I think the film has a big scope when it's in terms of the cinematography and travel. We did over 20 cities, 50 dates. I mean, we endured all types of weather: snow, rain, heat. I mean, we went to the deserts of Arizona, to the coast of Cannon Beach, to Chicago where it was snowing, to Louisiana. You know what I mean? So if you're looking for some good travel tips, you come watch this film. But truly, we wanted to give people an experience so they get the head knowledge of what this means, but also the experience in their heart that this is powerful and God is closer to you than you think.